Um, it's Odile again from the Biophilic Hub. So, for you who are new to this, I'll just tell you quickly that the Biophilic Hub is a community for people who come from the construction business, interior designers, anyone who's got to do with home in some way, who are interested in sustainability, in moving towards a more nature-centered way of working and of doing business, and of course of designing and creating products. There is a lot around biophilia, because biophilia does in fact mean love of life and life coming from nature. So we touch in this community, we touch various areas, from biophilic design to healthy materials, but we also touch other more holistic aspects, which could be something like nutrition, cleaning your home. So, to create spaces where we really um, feel good. So, it's good for our wellness, it's good for human health, it's good for planet health. It's good for the ecosystems in which we live in. And by this, I mean everyone, inclusion, diversity, um, all those aspects. So today, um, as we know who says, we are going to be talking a little bit about cement. Okay, because last week we were talking about the ocean. Okay, because it was Ocean Week on the 8th of um, 8th of June, and it was very interesting. I must say, I followed a bit the One Ocean Foundation. If you have a chance, I also wrote an article in the Biophilic Hub magazine, so you can check that out on our website. It's the blog, and we had a look at a lot of um, products which can be made from ocean debris, including fishing nets. Now, on the back of this, I noticed that next week we are coming up with Ocean Race, which is coming into the port of Genoa in Italy, which is not too far from here. And the Ocean Race, not only is it an international sailing competition, very high quality, very competitive, but it also has a mission of trying to understand the state of our oceans. And in doing so, it has several teams. Why am I taking you to this? Because one of the team's sponsors is Holcim. Now, I came across Holcim a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago. And I delved quite, I really tried to understand what they were doing. And they are cement manufacturers, okay? They are cement manufacturers, greens, what is called green cement, which is becoming more and more popular. Now, it's not a trend, it's a necessity. So much so that our friend Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary, said, had a meeting, he talked in a meeting with the Cement and Concrete Association, and he was nudging them to do more, okay? Because what they are doing is not enough if we want to meet our targets of 1.5, of reducing the 1.5 degree by 2030. And this is very important. Okay, just open and close brackets. Why do we concentrate all our energy on this 1.5, on reducing the carbon emissions, and reducing the temperature by 1.5, when there are so many other things to do as well? But we give so much attention to this because it is the number one killer. If we don't meet this target, we will, and if we don't keep under control our carbon emissions, we are going to keep having this climate crisis, okay? And everything else will become secondary. So I love biophilic design. I love using healthy materials. But if the world as a whole does not solve this problem, we're not going to go very far. So I think a certain amount of attention must be given to this problem. And as people working in the home industry and construction industry in general, okay, it's very important to bear in mind that of global carbon emissions, 40% comes from buildings and infrastructure. Okay, so anything we build, and infrastructure, I mean infrastructure, railways, roads, tunnels, bridges, any kind of infrastructure. So buildings and infrastructure, that could be from your little house in Wales right up to the latest bridge they are going to be now building between Italy and Sicily. So let's have a look at these figures, because these are the figures which move, okay, move us to make decisions. So as I said, 40% of total global emissions is by the building and infrastructure industry. And this accounts for approximately 15, I'm looking ahead in my numbers here, 15 gigatons, okay? Of these 15 gigatons, about 15 to 20% is for the buildings, and no, I beg your pardon, approximately 20 come from the housing, okay? Approximately 12 come from the housing, and 3 come from the infrastructure. So you would say, oh, well, it's the housing the issue. Is it? Because of these 12 of the housing emissions which come from the housing, what comes from the production of materials, so I'm speaking about the production here today, 15 to 20% come from production. And from the infrastructure, the production of material used for the infrastructure counts for 50% of these 3 gigatons. So if I have a look at this, of these total 15 gigatons produced by the building and infrastructure, okay, 2.4 tons, okay, come from the production of cement for the buildings. So of 12 gigatons, 2.4 come from the production of cement. Whilst in the infrastructure, of these 3 gigatons, seeing as 60% is counted for the production of materials, that means of these 3 gigatons, or 1.8 gigaton come from the production of cement for infrastructures. So if we start, so you can see that the big difference of the 12 gigatons versus the 3 gigatons is significantly reduced, the difference, the scissors, should I say, between building and infrastructure when it comes to the production of the material. Now, production of material for the whole of the, not just for cement, I beg your pardon, this is for the production of the materials for the buildings, and that's 2.4 gigatons. And 1.8 gigatons is for the production of the materials to build infrastructure. Now, the question, why did I stop on this? Because the question really comes to me is, oh, well, that's reduced significantly the scissors. But what there is an enormous difference between these two is the number of clients. I mean, I don't know how many clients there are in the building industry, but I expect hundreds of thousands. I don't know how many clients exactly there are for building infrastructures, but my impression is that we are usually talking about central or regional government, so public spending. It is clear that the number of clients is significantly reduced. And we will get to that in a minute. So we saw that this is quite a lot. Okay. So why is Guterres angry? What did he say about this? We know that AEC, that is architecture, engineering, and contractors, do have a certain influence because, after all, what they design and specify is what is going to be put into the buildings and the constructions or the infrastructure. But on the other hand, it's also the buyer who sets the budget in according to the mission of the project and in accordance with government regulation, who has a certain amount of say in this. Because if the architect or the engineering firm acquire a contract to design and build a building, they will be talking to their client, and their client is going to set the objectives of this project. And they will be setting it not only on the basis of costs, yes, but on the basis of the function of this building. And the function of this building can also be influenced by the choices that these final clients make in terms of, okay, so I want a building which has a certain level of carbon emissions for its whole life cycle. Okay. And in order to obtain this life cycle, I have such and such to spend. Okay. And the designer, the architect or engineer, will have to specify products accordingly, will have to design accordingly, and so define the amount of concrete that's going to be put and the type of concrete that's going to be put into the project. So there are many elements which go into this. So where does the manufacturer come in? And why should the manufacturer define or review first of all, the products it proposes on the market, and secondly, its manufacturing process? Because after all, we did say that it is the production of the material which has the greatest impact. I didn't go into the detail of the numbers of how much concrete actually impacts carbon emissions. Just to give you a big number, concrete and cement industry account for 7% of global carbon emissions. And on the building, a lot of you will already know all these data. Concrete and cement in itself usually account for 30% of the emissions of a building. Okay. So let's have a look at the manufacturers and what we can do when we decide, okay, and what specifies ought to be doing. Now, it seems that the concept of circularity must be aligned to the objectives of the project. So, notwithstanding the function of the project and how this must be met in terms of safety and construction, okay, so I'm not saying that we have to change the type of material just, to cool. Obviously, there are a certain amount of types of materials that engineers and architects will know much better than myself, which need to be used for the structure and the safety of the project, and to obtain the function of the project. So, notwithstanding that, they will obviously have to take into consideration the priorities of the project. And if the priorities of the project is, I want a project that's got to last 500 years, whatever happened, never going to be knocked down, I don't want any maintenance costs, then obviously I will be taken to specify a certain type of product. On the other hand, if the project does have an objective where carbon emissions, the control of carbon emissions is in the total life cycle, and I am even prepared to reduce the amount, the life cycle of the product, and I am prepared to look after it during maintenance, careful also of the emissions made during maintenance, then probably I will be looking at another kind of cement. Probably a green cement would be good in this case. So consequently, the what is specified, and this is always an argument, what came first, the chicken or the egg? So the architects will always, and our engineers will always argue that what they specify is obviously determined by the objectives of the project. So who do we have to get on board? The client. And we all know that. And they are right in this. But it is also their job to propose alternatives. And the buyer, the project buyer, is also in a position to work together with the AEC and, should I say, local governments where possible, to find alternatives that still will meet the project's objective. Why do I say this? Because as a buyer for the project, you can also determine that they will meet the objectives of the project. Nevertheless, and so maybe you need more traditional kind of cement. Nevertheless, it's the selection of who produces the cement which will differ. So this is where the due diligence comes in. And this is where I am referring to what Mr. Guterres said just a few days ago, in that I'm not talking about jumping to green cement at the moment. All I am talking about is optimizing and cleaning the production process of the cement itself. So clearly, I will have a higher carbon emissions if my cement is produced using coal as energy. Why do I say this? I'm going back to my infrastructure. So we have green cement, we have classical cement. We have a project who has an objective which can differ. And at one point, okay, I'm jumping that. At one point, we're going to have to choose: can we do green cement or can we use traditional cement? So for certain things, you may have to use traditional cement. Of this traditional cement, there can be various levels of carbon emissions. So it's not just a question green or traditional. It's also a question of suppliers within the sector of traditional cement. We want suppliers whose carbon emission is lower. So infrastructure, which classically would probably have to use a different kind and probably more traditional cement, infrastructure is an important part. Now, I don't know any figures here, so this is just something which got me thinking when I read this. So we're speaking about looking for producers of cement who have low carbon emissions, okay, in their production process, not in the product themselves, but in the production process. So getting rid of using coal as energy. And I go back to this because I am thinking of the infrastructures in emerging markets, in markets which are growing really fast. And I'm thinking of Africa, and I'm thinking even of China, where I know for a fact there is still a lot of energy coming from coal. So recently I read that, you know, they're making quantum leaps towards renewable energy. But the country is very big. And I don't believe that, personally, I don't believe that a lot of the companies, or the majority of the companies, are using renewable energy. I mean, they're not in Europe. I can't believe they are in China or in Africa as well. So clearly, these are countries who are going to be consuming a lot of cement in order to build their infrastructures. But their production of cement is still very high in carbon emissions. And we're speaking about infrastructure. Different is for buildings, obviously. For buildings, you will have to use a certain amount, and you may, okay, have the opportunity, if specified, also to use green cement. I think probably green cement, someone will tell me green cement can be used like traditional cement anywhere. Okay. So I don't want to say something technical, I'm not too sure of, but I'm just saying that there are the two. Okay. You have the two options. And in markets that are growing very fast, the production of cement, the local production of cement, is probably not as low in carbon emissions as it should be. So, next step, what should we do? Okay, so first of all, certainly we've got, and I believe a lot in this, sit around a table, manufacturers, designers, procurers, and find a solution that can match the needs of all. Secondly, as we said at the beginning, the emissions of infrastructure are, yes, lower than buildings, but the number of clients which we speak to is much lower, and probably have, due to the size of of a lot of projects, not all of them, but a lot of projects, do have the capacity to sit down with local or main governments and find and define regulations. Because, as we said at the beginning, when the project procurement guy is sitting down and is looking at how to make ends meet between his budget, he is also looking on his desk at local regulations which he has got to meet. So if this is written in black and white, clearly that is going to be something he's going to have to take into account. So if I am looking that carbon emissions must only meet us in the production process of the cement, I'm not defining the type of cement, but just the number of carbon emissions that must be met. And if that is stated as a regulation, okay, or a policy divided by the company, clearly this will determine the rest of the project. They may decide simply to use it by due diligence, so choosing first of all, choosing manufacturers who don't use coal. Then they may go down and decide to use also green cement, where probably they use a certain amount of percentage of recycled cement in their product. So this is basically what I wanted to talk about today. There's a lot more behind it, and a lot more behind also the design process, which I don't want to go on about it. But I will write something in this about this in the biophilic hub community, and I will give reference to the documents which I read up on about it, because I think this is a very interesting argument which we have got to look at a bit more in detail. And soon we will be talking to someone from Holcim, who, as I said at the beginning, is a green cement manufacturer who is also very much in the forefront of the ocean race, which is going to, as they are a sponsor. So that said, let me just recap what my concerns are. My concerns, and please, if anybody has anything to correct me about or would like to add something to it, don't hesitate, reach out and we will do something. So my concerns about the cement is the use of coal, as Mr. Guterres said. And in particular, I am more concerned about the use of coal in the production of heavy cement, so cement, which I presume is being used for infrastructure. And so it comes to me, things which we may have a little bit less of a possibility to condition, because they are very much linked to regulations, as this is usually a public procurement. So anyone out there in public procurement who would like to add to this and to my concerns about the emerging markets, please don't hesitate to come to us. Well, that's all for today. I hope you had found this food for thought, and come back to me. Come back to me about it. And if you haven't had a chance, pop into the Biophilic Hub community, have a look around. We are adjusting a few things here and there, so that will be okay. And if you are thinking that maybe you as a small business owner can't do that much, maybe, it's too risky to shift to become more sustainable, or it's too risky to shift to become more nature-centered because you think it's just a trend, well, I have news for you. Because it's not a trend, and it's not as risky as you think it is, because now it is a must. Okay, so if we want to survive in this industry, we cannot not be sustainable. Okay, and I would like to invite you. I would like you to invite you to join the workshop, which will be held by the wealth coach, our friend Tiara Womack. Tiara Womack is a wealth coach, and she will be doing a workshop on Thursday, the 22nd at midday East. And here, her workshop is called Worthy to be Wealthy, because shifting your business in and aligning with your values is more likely to project you towards a life of abundance. And abundance, I don't want to overuse this word, but I do mean abundance both in terms economical terms, but in terms of relationships, in terms of should I say, just general fulfillment. Okay, so come join us. You will find everything on thebiophilichub.com. There you can go to the Learning Center, where you will find the workshops, and you'll be able to read our magazine, where we have a lot of interesting articles, and there you can also join the community. Okay, so well, that's all for today. Our time is up, and as per usual, it was great speaking to you guys on Monday. I hope to be back very soon with a series of guests who are going to come and talk to us about some very interesting products. See you next week. Bye for now.